a lifelong investment. Like this
Yep.
is a skill you can do that's accessible to anyone. And you can basically do this forever. Like you can do
Yep.
this for the rest of your life, sustain you on your hard days, on your impossible days,
Mhm.
because all of us for some skill that we've never learned, we've never been taught until now, to be able to get us through those really hard times. Because not like you said, like leaning towards friends and looking for a therapist, it doesn't really, you are not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for yourself the way you need to tailor just for you. And this is program does the exact opposite of all the stuff that we naturally tend to do, which is hurt ourselves, perseverate, think of the bad thoughts, ruminate. This is like, no, you're not feeding any of that. You're
Mhm.
instead going to focus on healthy things. And it's not like I have no idea about human psychology. I mean, I work in an ER, so I can read people. I understand. So, a couple things. I had already been seeing a Buddhist therapist. That's amazing. He's a great therapist for years, but there was nothing practical. It was more like, okay, when you have negative thoughts, take a few slow, deep breaths. But it wasn't like changing my thought patterns. It was more just like acknowledging my thoughts, accepting it, but then having to live with the pain and the
Mhm.
suffering. Wasn't helpful for me. I wasn't getting further, and I was finding myself getting more and more stuck in a rut, more depressed, and I didn't have a way out. And when I met you, Lance, you were one of the things you said is that you can spend, and it resonated because it was true. You said you could spend years in therapy and not get anywhere. You can spend thousands of dollars seeing therapists, psychologists, and I will help you in 6 weeks. And at first I was like, well, 6 weeks, that's like no time. I've spent years in therapy not getting better. So how would 6 weeks help? But when I read some of the stuff that you sent me, read the testimonials, heard people, I realized all these people probably, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? That it doesn't work. What's the best that can happen? I could learn a skill or a new way of thinking that I could use for myself. But you know what else? I use it for my patients. Like even last night, I had a couple depressed, anxious teenagers with chest pain that was not cardiac.
Mhm.
And they were ruminating the fearful thoughts, the things that I did. I like simplified the program and I gave it, and you could just see the relief on these kind of desperate
Mhm.
teenagers' faces. And it's not your program, but it's very similar. And I gave that to them.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
an outlet for a teenager that's cutting, or a teenager that's depressed, or a teenager that's been to the ER 4 times for chest pain because it's anxiety and panic.
Mhm.
So long and short of it, your program 100% was a lifeline for me. I don't think I would have made it through July, August, September, October with relative ease after a pretty devastating breakup for me without your program. Like I know that's true because when I kind of derailed and stopped doing your program, even like months after being so solid, I fell back to where I was. And then now that I've restarted the program, I'm back up. So it's not that it was, so I could tell it wasn't time that needed to elapse. It wasn't that I needed to get wiser in some way or less hurt or find someone new. It was literally just the program. In July, after the breakup, I was a mess. I met you probably like end of July, beginning of August, and it was an immediate like lifting of my spirits. It was an immediate like sense of relief. I couldn't even, I was happy again. I was smiling again. I was gaining weight back. It was immensely powerful. Um, so yeah, I mean, the reason I did your program is because I kind of instinctually knew this might work. This is different than everything else. Um, this is practical. This gives me something to actually focus on and do. It's not theoretical. It's not reading a bunch of philosophy. It's actually doing something real.
Mhm.
And I'm someone who needs to do something proactive. I can't just sit there and hope for things to get better. So it gave me project to do, and the
Mhm.
project was me. Well, what was interesting is that I was very skeptical in the beginning. I had talked to you a bunch of times and then seemed interested, and then I was scared. I'm like, well, this is a lot of money and I have no evidence to say that this works. I asked my therapist, asked my best friends, and everyone was like, no, don't do it. This is ridiculous. You're going to waste your money. Just stay with
Yeah.
you are. And I thought about it. I'm like, what is my status quo right now? Like my status quo is seeing my therapist once a week, going to work. And none of that is really helping. And I'm very depressed. And my friends mean well, but they're not here. So I thought about it and I was like, what he's saying makes sense. He's talking about biology, he's talking about neural networks, and it's absolutely true. When you are persisting in in a thought pattern, you build it, you make it stronger, and then you have more and more negative thoughts. It releases chemicals that are stress hormones and negative effects on your body. And I don't need any of that. So if he can teach me a way that I can reprogram my brain, retrain my thoughts, I can undo some of that learned damage, some of those voices in my head that tell me all these negative untrue things, and I can change that. And I didn't know how to do that before. Like there was no actual practical guide for doing that. So I mean, it 100% works because I've seen it work for myself. I come from a very type A family, perfectionist parents that had very high standards. So that negative, perfectionistic, not never being good enough, never achieving, even if I went to med school, why didn't I go to Harvard? That kind of horrible self-talk had to be undone because it was years of stuff that I didn't think could be undone in 6 weeks, but so much of it was undone in 6 weeks. Um, so I guess if you're skeptical, I understand. I was skeptical as well. I come from a medical background, so obviously, you know, I would gravitate towards the PhD therapist. What the hell is even a life coach? It's like a quote from Cobra Kai where Johnny Lawrence says to his ex-wife who's in like a drug rehab program, and she's like, "My life coach said," and he goes, "Life, might as well burn your money." And that's like the common thought of what a life coach is,
Mhm.
but your program that way because it's not like rah rah. What are your new activities going to be? How are you going?
Yeah.
Are you going to take 75 classes? What is your long term? It's not like that. It's more like neurobiology. These are your thoughts. These thoughts are creating this chemical hormonal response, which is creating this harm to your body. And it's a feedback loop that's never ending. Why don't we break this loop, break this chain, and create a new neurobiology? So not to get emotional, but it was true. Once I got better, once I was looking forward to the future, once I was in a better place, um, this former resident of mine was literally bugging me nonstop to do a medical mission. I was like, no, no, no. When I was in a bad place, I was like, no, I don't have time to go to the Dominican Republic, speak to people who don't speak English and like struggle with medicine in a rural community. I'm in a bad place right now. And when I stopped telling myself that, when I told myself, you have a lot of gifts. You love to help people, you want to reach out, you've always wanted to help like a community that would be so grateful to get anything. Wouldn't that be amazing to get to do that? It changed my thought and I said yes to the opportunity. I met amazing group of nurses from Rush. I met an amazing group of doctors in the Dominican. Now I have like 20 or 30 friends slash acquaintances that have changed my life that I'm still friends with that are coming to visit me in July. And that was the most amazing opportunity and the most amazing people. Sure, it wasn't the perfect relationship with the perfect guy, but this is so much better. This is like a network of people I met just from being in a better headspace. So, I mean, it does work and it worked amazingly for me. So now I look back, holy cow, like it really was the best thing that happened to me. That man was utterly boring. I was not happy in the relationship.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
confused attachment with love. There was a lot of like, I mean, if things were right, they wouldn't have ended. It wouldn't have derailed so easily. And then the other things that Lance will give you is like these little pearls. He doesn't really let you talk about your relationship very much or like
Yeah.
of doing, but a few times he did finally cave, but it was helpful. Once he said, he wasn't built to last, and I hold on to that all the time. I'm like, he wasn't built to last. Lance is a guy. A guy would know another guy.
Mm.
And then Lance said, he always had one foot in, one foot out, and I was like, that hurts, but it's true. And then some of the other things you taught me were, Santa, you can have money, you can have wealth, you can have all these external things, but all of that can be taken away. The two things that can't be are, I remember this, you said personal growth and constantly improving yourself. And the second thing you told me was what you give to the world. So I did that.
Mhm.
I thought to myself, what could be my personal growth? I'm like, I love singing and dancing. I'm going to take those lessons. And then I thought, what about giving back? I'm like, I'm going to do volunteer work. I'm going to do that medical mission. And you're right. Everything else could be taken away from me. But those two things, they're from me, and they can't be taken away. So, like, it's those little things that you also teach beyond the program that's also actually been more helpful to me than anything. So, I appreciate that a lot. It was super helpful. The other thing I was going to mention is on your program, I didn't require or need any kind of medication of any kind, not a stimulant, not a sleep aid, nothing. I went from requiring my Adderall and requiring something to help me sleep, like Benadryl, to not to like having the best sleep ever, like really like restful sleep where you wake up joyous. I'm like, what is this? Like, I
Mhm.
don't wake up wet. But yeah, this legitimately, it just, like you said, you might not see the effect during the workout, but you feel it after. And
Mhm.
the feeling after, you're sleeping better, you're eating better, you're healthier, you're smiling. Amazing. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, that's awesome. I have an idea then. So how about this here? Okay, I tell people very clearly, it's in the working agreement. I'm not a quote medical professional, but you are, right? So as a medical doctor, I always tell people this. I'm like, listen, a lot of people in this program, you'll notice some significant health benefits. I can't tell you what they are going to be, but when people start telling me they're sleeping better, and I got so many of those. That's one of the most common ones I get. I'm sleeping better than I have in a long time. I don't know if you saw Annie's video, for example, but she's like one of the biggest benefits I got that I did not expect. She goes, I've never slept this good ever before. And I always want people to understand why that is. And so as a medical in the medical field, I want you to see if you see any gaps in why that is. Because I know you're going to say no. Every doctor, including yourself, I would have to say disease is a body not at ease. That's what the fucking disease is. It's a body where there's literally an imbalance. Now, most people, their whole life, they're constantly in that state of fight or flight or anxiety, whatever you want to call that, or autopilot. There's many different words you can use, but bottom line is they're literally walking around their whole life like a fucking coiled spring. They're constantly
Right.
tense, waiting to do this, do that. Oh my God, I got to call this person, got to run there, got to run there. That's how most people live their life, like a coiled spring. And if in that analogy, that generic person is living their life maybe at 60%, living the emotions of stress, if that's where they're living, and you have a practical process that literally releases that and shifts that, not that where it's perfect, but like in a practical way, what if you went from 60% living the emotions of stress to say 30%, and you're less of that coiled spring? Is it not beyond obvious that is going to have tremendous health benefits?
Oh, for sure. 100%. I mean, I don't have any research to prove this, but in my own like experience working on like the hemonc floor and working in the ER, I can legitimately tell you that the child and the family's dynamic makes such a difference in the medical outcome of a child. In fact, they did this study that they looked at children with asthma, and what they found was one of the biggest risk factors to how severe that child's asthma was related to the interpersonal dynamics of the parents. So if they witnessed violence between the parents, that child's asthma severity was astronomical,
Mhm.
more so hereditary, more so than environment, poverty, any of that. It was just the child's stress and anxiety
Mhm.
watching this. That was one of the highest predictors of their disease severity. So same thing for us, like as
Yep.
humans, like how well our body functions depends on what's our cortisol level, how stressed are we, what's our fight or flight hormones like, how much epinephrine do you have in your body, how stressed are you, what's your heart rate like, what's your blood pressure,
Mhm.
right, like because all catecholamines are that stress hormones are increasing your heart rate. What's long-term effects of constantly being hypertensive, angry, jaw tense, like anxious? Like our bodies aren't meant to be in that sustained state of stress like that. So yeah, I mean, there's absolute 100% better health benefits just teaching yourself to chill the fuck out. At first you might think, but I really need to process my feelings and my grief. I really need to like get to the bottom of what I'm feeling. 2 minutes. I mean, am I just like pushing that away? Am I not addressing the problem? Honestly, when you don't let yourself indulge in negative thoughts, you're thinking much more clearly because once you get in a spiral of negativity and stress, your amygdala has taken over. Your emotions have taken over. You're not thinking anymore. You're just feeling and reacting and being responsive to how you feel. You've stopped the higher processing. And if this helps one other person in my situation, it's like I got to be part of your ripple,
Mhm.
like the ripple of. So I'm really happy to do it.